Hi, I'm Carrie Jill Wise. Today I'm going to share some information with you about um, AT or assistive technology devices for blind secondary students. I'm studying assistive technology and human services at California State University, Northridge. Students with disabilities of all types are better able to participate in the curriculum when they're supported with assistive technology devices. That can vary widely depending on the student and their levels, what kind of things that they need support in. My expertise as a teacher of the visually impaired and assistive technology major is with blind and visually impaired students. Students who are blind and visually impaired, they have to learn the core curriculum that's been adopted in 41 states. And then those states that don't have that adopted have kind of their own version that's very similar. And then on top of that, they also have to learn the expanded core curriculum. The expanded core curriculum refers to 9 different areas. One area is compensatory skills, things like Braille reading, being able to read tactile images, different things that as a blind student they have to be able to do to access education. Other things like orientation and mobility, those cane skills, being able to safely cross the street, being able to identify if there's a car coming, being able to identify cardinal directions. And there's a specialist that works with them on that. Um, Other things, recreation and leisure, being able to enjoy yourself, knowing different ways to do that, knowing how to participate in recreation activities with like beeping balls and just different things that can be adapted for blind people. Some other areas that are included in the expanded core curriculum are things like life skills, being able to cook and take care of yourself, being able to match clothing and label things. And then there's all kinds of different um, apps and assistive technology that can support that. Things like Tap Tap See, if you're trying to identify something that can identify people and to give descriptions. It's pretty accurate. They aren't perfect. I definitely have had one tell me I was a little bit older than I am and that my hair was brown. I was like, it's red, but it was very close, I think. It's very useful technology. All kinds of ways to be supported in the expanded core curriculum, as well as the core curriculum. Some other examples are the refreshable Braille displays. You can see those in the bottom picture with the purple. That's a refreshable Braille display hooked up to a laptop with a QWERTY keyboard. And then the girl on the top, she's got a refreshable, looks like a Focus 40 maybe, hooked up to an iPad there. That bottom row on those with the white dots, those are called a refreshable Braille display. And they are very useful pieces of technology. We're going to talk more about those later, at some of the research that's gone into designing them and improving their design. Some other assistive technology devices would be smart canes, screen readers. Those are things like VoiceOver that will read the screen to you so that blind people can use a computer. Magnifiers for people with low vision. There's different freestanding magnifiers. There's also magnifiers for computers and interacting with a computer called Zoom Text. CCTVs and various apps. There's apps for everything. There's apps for identifying money, identifying products, all kinds of things for help with shopping. So a brief history of Braille. Braille is obviously very important to the blind community. Braille was invented by a blind teenager. He went blind as a teenager in an accident, and he was determined to read again. So in 1824, Louis Braille altered a method of sending military communiques in the cover of darkness to bring the light of literacy to generations of blind people. Basically, the military had created this system of passing messages, but it wasn't really working. They weren't really able to spend time to build up that tactile sensitivity, and so it was abandoned by the military. But Louis Braille heard about it and saw the use of it for blind people and how it could be altered. It's definitely changed. I think the military one used 8 dots and Braille uses 6. And I think he changed the order of the dots and a lot of different things about it. It's definitely not the same system that they use. There was significant alterations to it. So to compare, print writing was invented in 3,400 to 3,200 BC. So that's thousands and thousands of years ago. It was actually independently invented 4 different times, is what it said, which I thought was really interesting. I didn't know that about print writing. But you can comparing that 1824 is only a couple hundred years ago versus thousands of years ago. So there's a lot of room for development in Braille literacy, a lot of room for improvement for sure. Braille literacy rates are unfortunately low. Literacy rates are directly related to later rates of employment. That's true for any group. Your rates of early, like 3rd grade, literacy are strongly related to rates of employment, which is also related strongly to rates of incarceration. So we definitely want to improve Braille literacy. According to the National Federation of the Blind's report on Braille literacy crisis in America in 2009, fewer than 10% of the 1.3 million people who are legally blind in the United States are Braille readers. Further, a mere 10% of blind children are learning it. Early intervention is so important. It's so important to start these skills young and expose children to the kind of experiences that they need to be able to learn Braille. And even as adults, older people can learn it if they go blind. It's expensive, and we need to fund the assistive technology devices to support these people learning it. Also, the amount of time they need with different specialists learning the different skills. So basically what Braille reading is, it's tribology. What is tribology? Tribology is a noun. It's the study of friction. And basically being able to read Braille, you're feeling friction in your fingertips, taking that, turning it into phonemes, and then comprehending complex text. So little is known or understood about how children to read to learn print. Really in the United States in the last 100 years is the first time that we've tried to teach just the public how to read. And it's still, we're discovering new things all the time, and that's even more so true for people who are learning how to read Braille. It's a complex and fascinating process that takes years to develop. It's very complex. There's a lot of skills that you have to develop to be able to read and write Braille. And there's significant need for improvement and significant gains that are expected to be made. Just thinking about how much reading and print literacy rates have increased in the last 100 years, how much opportunity there is for improvement for blind people in Braille literacy. So Bluetooth Braille devices are a really important tool that should be introduced fairly young. I would say in upper elementary school, students should start learning to use them. As you can see, it has Braille keys so that it can be entered and used kind of like a Brailler, like a Perkins Brailler, which is often preferred by young Braille users. They're going to be more used to using that 3-key Braille or that 6-key Brailler than they are a computer, like a QWERTY keyboard. And it's important to have that still available. And then the bottom row with the white, that's a refreshable Braille display. Um, so the lines can change, and those blue keys on the side, like where it says Freedom Scientific, those can scroll up and down lines of text. You can create documents with this. You can save documents with this. They can complete work with this. It is, they can email their work to their teacher. It can do all kinds of really useful things. It can be connected to an iPad. It can be connected to laptops as well. They're all very, very important and useful features. So these Braille cells are called piezoelectric Braille cells. And basically it works with electrodes are beneath them, and they push up these little pins. And some of the research that has gone into them is finding the right size of the dot. And they have found that for Braille readers, it's between 0.02 millimeters and 0.05 millimeters. So they're pretty small. And that's pretty consistent for most of the Braille users. I would say you would probably want to go with the larger size just to make sure that more people can use it, as many as possible. There's all different kinds of features that could be added and built in to help support Braille literacy. A lot of these devices have audio output, and that's really helpful. That, you know, not only can they read it themselves by reading the Braille, they can also have it read to them, because that's expected on a laptop or anything like that. A lot of things can be read to us now. Another way you can use the refreshable Braille display is connecting it to a computer. There's ducts and connectors for that, not ducts. The standard specifications have been shared in research and become industry standards. So the size of the Braille dots creating each cell are designed to allow the highest rates of fluency with the lowest number of saccades. So saccades is like when your eyes travel back to look at a previous word. And so it's been shown that if you get too small of text, you have more of these saccades. And the same thing is true if you get too small of Braille dots. There is an increase in the amount of saccades where the Braille reader is moving their hands back to go back and look at things and reread. These rates are influenced by the width and height of the Braille dot, the texture, and the pressure. Interpreting friction from your fingertips into a literary masterpiece is a complicated process. And I think it's a process that we can get better at teaching kids how to do, and getting more support for these teachers that are trying to do this, because oftentimes you might be the only teacher in that district doing that kind of job, and it can be very difficult. And I think we could do a better job supporting these teachers and these students to have higher rates of literacy, which affect later rates of employment. So legal and ethical considerations right now for some of the studies I read about involved like a focus group of 5 to 7 people, which doesn't seem like that much. But right now with COVID, that would be dangerous. So we don't need to be getting together any groups, especially in the disability community. We need to really value our community and keep people safe. Many people with disabilities have other kinds of health issues. Oftentimes it comes with a mixed bag of, maybe asthma or hypertension, just other things that are coexisting, diabetes with other disabilities. And we need to be really careful with our our students that have disabilities, our teachers that are teaching them, our special education teachers, they have a high rate of disability. Um, they have high rates of stress and high rates of burnout. It's hard to keep these professionals, and we need to value their lives and be careful with them. And I am interested if in the future we will be seeing more collection of information through Zoom interviews or online questionnaires and those type of interactions. I'm interested to see if that has any effect in the future on participation rates of different groups. If it's more or less difficult depending on like certain disabilities to participate that way. Perhaps intellectual disabilities would have more trouble doing online questionnaires or connecting to Zoom interviews than they would participating in person with a person who could question them and work with them. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great night.
Carrie Jo Wise, 2020 Assistive Technology and Human Services presentation. Thank you to my professors, classmates, family, and friends for all your support in pursuing my degree. To my precious daughter, dream big, you can do anything.